Yo, what is up, guys? Joker here bringing you another video. And it's going to be pretty much a rant, and I don't care if people don't like that, right? This is going to be a continuation of my Do you think Diablo 4 will survive the launch of Last Epoch video. I'm going to be pretty much going over my opinion of Last Epoch, its official launch, and then why I'm so annoyed, right? So, in case you're unaware, I think it was something like last Wednesday, Last Epoch officially launched with its 1.0, and it's had a decent amount of server issues, right? Now, this is speculation because personally, I've never had server issues, but I've been working a lot and I haven't had that much time to actually play. I know that there's been people playing online on offline that have had no issues. So once again, I know because a post put out by EHG that there's been server issues and stuff like that. Just personally, I haven't really experienced them, and I know that there's a set up the player base that hasn't experienced them either, but I think it is the larger portion of the player base. Actually, I don't know. I think it's actually 50-50 that has been having server issues and people that haven't been having server issues. It all depends on a number of factors, like when you play, do you play on offline, all of these things, right? But let's just go under the assumption that you had server issues, right? So the launch of Last Epoch happened, you had server issues, and you probably weren't able to play for a couple of days. But all in all, I would say that the launch of Last Epoch was successful. Besides the server issues, I would say that it was a successful launch. They got pretty much 6 or 7 times their highest ever consecutive player count, right? A lot of people were introduced to the game. A lot of people have been introduced to the ARPG genre in an easy and digestible way. So, all in all, I would say that it has been a good and successful launch. Let's get into the opinionated portion of this video, right? Where we're moving away from the fact that the game launched. Yes, the game launch was a little bit rocky, but what does Last Epoch do for us? Last Epoch introduces a large number of players into the ARPG genre, like I mentioned, in an easy, digestible way. It has simple and more complex systems. It's not like Diablo 4, where it's completely brain dead, but it's not like Path of Exile, where it's overly complicated. It is a good middle ground. I can see players that put maybe 200, 300 hours into Last Epoch, being able to jump into Path of Exile and have a understanding of how a lot of the systems work, right? Because a lot of the things are similar, and once you grasp the easy introduction, then you can move over to something more complicated. That's how the learning process has always worked, right? Once you do something easy, you can always increase your knowledge of it and then move to something harder. And I think that Last Epoch does that really well for anyone that's interested in moving over to PoE. It introduces you into build diversity, it introduces you to defensive layers, it introduces you to a crafting system, and it introduces you into the concept of scaling damage with multiple factors, right? Because a lot of these things that you have to have in Last Epoch, you have to have in PoE 2 just to a higher degree, right? You have to have defensive layers, you have to have capped res, you have to understand how to scale damage with flat percent and more multipliers, right? So it's like an intro course in ARPGs where it's not completely brain dead like Diablo 4, where it actually introduces players at a good learning curve to get into a higher end ARPG like Path of Exile. So, in my opinion, Last Epoch's launch has been amazing. It's got a lot of players interested. A lot of people are loving it. The only issue has been the server issues, right? And this does open the door for a lot of these players to come over to Path of Exile because, like I mentioned, Path of Exile is intimidating, but if you have a couple of hundred hours in a similar ARPG, because they are similar, right? A lot of the concepts in it are the same. You have to know how to build defensive layers in both Last Epoch and Path of Exile. You have plenty of build diversity where you're able to see and learn how to scale builds in an easy way. You take that same concept and you can make Path of Exile builds because the factors that you use to make a Last Epoch build, it may not be directly addressed the same way with the obvious tags in Path of Exile, but it's the same concept. You get base damage. You understand what scales your damage and your skill. You get increased damage multipliers and you get more damage multipliers. And then that's how you get damage in Path of Exile, right? Base damage plus increase plus more multipliers. And then it's the niche things like attack speed and stuff like that, right? All of those same things are planning any Last Epoch build. And then the crafting is an introduction to how crafting in ARPGs works, right? It gives you a basic understanding of prefixes and affixes, the fact that modifiers on items can be implicits, prefixes, or suffixes. You know what also has these? Path of Exile, right? Lesser degree, but it still has them. Implicits in Path of Exile are a lot more variable, right? Where majority of base regular items, the implicit is not as important as it is in Last Epoch, but the prefixes and the suffixes and what modifiers can roll on each is still important. So it is my intro to Path of Exile, essentially. And this brings me to my last point. If you are one of the people that is intentionally leaving a disingenuous comment or review on Last Epoch, go fuck yourself. Okay? You are the problem. You're the reason why, out of the last 7 PoE leagues, only one or two of them have actually been good and successful. You're the reason why Diablo 4 thinks they can get away with $100 DLC and $65 horses because of the fact that if the players are going to negatively review your game, no matter if you do good or bad, what's your incentive to do good, right? If you're going to give me a negative review, if I tell you to go fuck yourself, or if I tell you I love you, if you're still going to give me a negative review, why the fuck does it matter if I tell you to eat shit, right? I would rather try to force feed you MTX that and power create fucking millions of dollars of microtransaction, shitty DLC, no content, $100 overpriced expansions. Like, I would rather do that for the few of you that will still buy it regardless, as opposed to pumping out a good quality product. Because what motivation do I have to give you a good product? If you're going to tell me I suck either way, why am I going to try? That makes absolutely no sense, right? And I don't know if you didn't think about it that way, but that's literally what it is if you're intentionally leaving a negative review on a product that you enjoy just to drag it down, you are the problem and you can go fuck yourself. I don't know if you don't know how review systems work, but one negative review has to be counterweighted by almost 5 positive reviews to get it out of a negative status. I hope you understand that, right? Because it goes back to just like a grading system as well, where C's and D's those are filling grades for a game. I know you may have scooted by your entire life getting C's and D's, never applying yourself and getting passed along with like No Child Left Behind and stuff like that that didn't allow you to fail. But games are not the same. If a game gets an overabundance of negative reviews, then that game, it has a large chance of failing, as well as not attracting new players, not inspiring other game studios to copy their pattern. You do understand that, right? That if you give bad reviews on a good product, then people won't know it's a good product and no one will take inspiration from it. No players will go to it. They'll assume that instead of you just being a whiny bitch, that it's actually a bad product. And we get Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. We get $100 expansions because you wanted to be petty and downvote a game that you enjoyed. So when there's not good games or good expansions or good leagues, I hope you understand it is 110% your fault.